Hi everybody, welcome to Chapter 3, which looks at the basic funding structure from Money in Schools. So we're going to look at the basic funding structures in our schools today. I really think this is something that will impact you as a building principal if you're currently one, and if you become a superintendent, it's going to impact you. I'm not going to say read the chapters that in depth, but this is one that I would, because you need to understand the systems so that you can explain it in your paper when it comes time to write it. So our questions: context of funding schools in America. What is the overarching tax system at federal, state, and local levels? What are state aid formulas? What is a fair funding formula? How do states fund schools? And what funding improvements may be on the horizon? So one of the main things that you have to remember about schools is they fall under the government's responsibility and compete for limited tax resources. When I say government, that's state, local, and federal. But you need to know the kinds and types of revenue that's responsible for funding schools. So we go over that and we kind of mention where the money comes from and where the money goes to. So here's what you need to know. Number one, property taxes is what funds schools. That's the bottom line. How do schools get money? Tax properties. But it's contested mostly between local and state sources. The federal input is more program-based. Taxes are what funds our school system. We need to know how states distribute their aids to schools. So we'll talk about elements that make up a fair and balanced formula. Good tax systems should give revenue from multiple sources. Basically trying to find equitable aid, meaning that if a school's lower performing, we're going to give them a little more money to help them catch up. If a school's sustaining, you want to help them as well, but you want to help them sustain. But our goal in state funding is to distribute this in a fair and equitable manner. Our goal locally is not to distribute in a fair and equitable manner. It's to get as much money as we can into our own districts. But at the state level, that's different. So state aid formulas, they're tools really to address disparities, meaning the schools that need the money get the money from the state. So state aid should reduce the gap between the rich districts and your poor urban and rural school districts. My experience, the rural school districts suffer the most. I'm coming from an area where I saw that regularly. It's kind of difficult to see, but it's true. So the textbook explains some historical how school got money. If you want to look at it, go for it, but I won't hold this accountable on an exam. I don't think it's necessarily important for what we're studying here. So what you do need to know is this. This is the big idea from this chapter, and what I really want to make sure that you understand, because this is going to benefit you. Flat grants, equalization grants, multi-tier grants, and full state funding grants. Flat grants. This is a flat sum of money given to school districts regardless to other sources of money coming in. If the state says we're doing a flat grant system, every district, every county receives the same amount of money. Doesn't matter what. Is that fair? Yeah, it's equitable. Everybody gets the same amount of money. You can obviously see there are problems with this. Equalization grants. This is more common. These bring the expenditure levels in rich and poor districts closer together. You're using money to fund initiatives. This gives districts that don't have the fiscal capacity, ones where the properties aren't worth as much, more money. The state has more control in your district, which could be a problem for you if you don't want the state to have control, because you're taking money from the state. Multi-tier grants use a flat and equalization approach. They'll basically say, we'll give additional funding and we'll increase taxes at the local level, but then once that tax at the local level is increased, they get more state aid. So they have to decide whether or not it's worth it to increase the taxes. If it's worth it, they increase them and they get more state money. So it's kind of holding the local accountable. I like that. Then we have full state funding grants. This is basically saying, we're just giving money pulled at the state level and redistributing it to the district regardless of local property wealth. This really hurts localized control of schools because all the property tax money goes in a pot and then the state says it's going here, here, and here. Big problems with this approach. So few states have adopted it. Hawaii is the only one that has. Local school districts will not relinquish control, meaning that we're not going to see this for a considerable amount of time in our education system. We might, though, one day. Some of the questions, though, really to ask are, is this fair? I mean, are not full state funding grants fair? If we gave money to the state and said, distribute it wherever needed, it could improve student performance, but funding in higher income districts would be reduced. Is that fair? Well, we're helping the people that need it the most. Is that fair? But what would you say if you have to pay more taxes to help those people and they're not going to your district? There are problems with this. So if you get in a political position and you have to distribute grants, my advice to you, try to find one that's an equal balance and an equal playing field. Don't just do equalization. The multi-tier is probably better. So we really, have this idea of horizontal fairness, meaning that all children are funded equally. Per pupil expenditures done through need equalization and cost equalization. We'll talk about these a little bit of how they can impact you in your buildings and what they mean. So need equalization says every child gets their own education appropriate to their needs, meaning that children that are at risk, that are either SPED, ethnic minorities, ELL students, funding has to increase for them because they need it in order for them to receive a quality education. Needs equalization says that we're going to try to address social and economic inequality by targeting funding to low-income students. Normally this comes in breakfast or dinner programs or reading programs, which I see nothing wrong with. I think those are great, and it's not costing much, and it's a good way to reduce economic inequalities. Bilingual education comes in forms of different equalization as well. We all know in Florida it's a big deal here. I'm in a state right now that it's kind of a big deal, but south of me in Texas, it's a huge deal. Different states need different money and different personnel for bilingual education, and they pay the teachers better. States with large bilingual populations spend the most. They have extensive programs, but less impacted states, they get a paraprofessional who speaks the language and they pay them $70 a day, and the service is limited. So special education really has been the most visible need equalization program. Most of the time this is done by a per pupil weight expenditure system, meaning that we say that maybe somebody with a hearing disability is worth 3.2, somebody that's behavioral emotional is worth 2.4, which is the regular categorical weight, and we weight the pupil. We're not weighting them to discriminate, we're weighting them to give more money. And then the teacher instructional unit can be allocated as appropriately as well to fund that. It depends on the type or severity of the disability in order for that to work. So cost equalization depends on different economies. Rural districts might have a higher time recruiting people to teach there. Living in an urban society, and actually living well, higher costs can come with that. Rurals have the real big problem with transportation, and this is this scarcity isolation thing that we're going to talk about when we talk about transportation. This is where this equalization principle really comes into play. So this chapter really gives an overview of different types of funding. Our authors say basically too many stakeholders are involved, so we're not going to change it. It's just the way it is. So trying to just have a basic understanding of this is really all that you need to do for this chapter. A lot of money in schools sets up these ideas, and then you can further expand on them on your own when you're looking at your budgeting. So the next chapter looks at district levels of accountability and auditing. If you need any assistance, let me know. Always here to help.